It is with great honor that I welcome you to this public forum, special conversation with Pita Limjaroenrat on democratic resilience, rule of law, institutional reform, and the role of civil society. My name is Mandy, and I will be your master of ceremony for today. We would like to welcome Mr. Pita Limjaroenrat, visiting fellow of Harvard Kennedy School and former leader, Move Forward Party, and Ambassador Sumadi Brotodiningrat, FPCI Senior Fellow. We would also like to welcome our partners and colleagues from embassies, think tanks, civil societies, and FPCI chapter students from various universities. And those who are tuning in online from more than 20 countries from across Southeast Asia, UK, US, India, and many more. This event is brought to you by Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia. For those who do not know it yet, FPCI is an independent and nonpartisan organization since its establishment in 2015. It has grown to become the largest grassroots foreign policy group in Indonesia, Southeast Asia, and the Indo-Pacific. Here is a brief video profile. Please enjoy.
Terdiam, ku melihat sadarku bertahun bersama terwujudlah terbayang yang terindah, yang terhampar berlalulah sadarku semuanya perasaan rasa cinta kaulah yang diinginkan aku dari mimpiku coba terbangkan hayalku dari sadarku. Terbayang yang terindah, yang terhampar berlalulah sadarku semuanya perasaan rasa cinta kaulah yang diinginkan aku dari mimpiku coba terbangkan hayalku dari sadarku.
Without further ado, let us proceed with today's main agenda. Give a warm round of applause for Mr. Pita Limjaroenrat and our moderator, Jenny, to the stage.
Thank you, Mandy. Thanks everyone for joining us. We are today joined by a very special guest whose I think political journey has sparked great interest and discussion beyond Thailand. Mr. Pita Limjaroenrat, thank you for joining us here.
Thank you very much for having me.
I think the best way to introduce Mr. Pita, although everybody have already known, these three things I quoted from you, from your recent words, so I didn't make it up. First, Prime Minister candidate. Second, election winner. And third is the post-parliamentarian.
Yes, or in a word, in America, they call me Prime Minister 29.5. So 29.5 is it's one shorter sentence than what you said just now. But people's choice and parliamentary chaos, that's me.
Exactly. But I think the rest of the stories behind those three words, I think it's only fair if I give the floor to you to briefly introduce not just who you are, but what you are right now. What are you currently working on, and why did you end up? How did you end up here in Jakarta?
Yes, I'm currently a visiting fellow at the Harvard Kennedy School, where I focus on grooming next generation leaders in Boston area. I also have a lot of students from Indonesia during my office hours to come and try to use me as a pathway to politics. More than Thai students, probably Indonesians, Filipinos, and then Thais, some from Japan, some from Colombia, and things like that. And usually the questions that I get from the Indonesian students would be how to start a political party. Number two would be how much would it cost to run for public office. So then that brought some intellectual curiosity, and made me wanted to come back to Jakarta once again. Before that, I was in politics, and before that, I was working for a management consulting company. So I had a chance to work with your energy companies like Pertamina and Permata Bank and all that. But that was 20 years ago when I was, in my early working areas, where I know a bit about your potential and your foundation as ASEAN #1. So because of all that, then I felt like if I had a chance to come back to Southeast Asia again, with the current situation of the great power rivalry, and when the regional unity is at most critical, ASEAN #2 and ASEAN #1 should finally get back together and start thinking about what we have in common. So that's the reason why I'm here at the moment. I'm on a political pause, so they deposed me and put a 10-year ban on my political journey. That means I have 9 more years to burn. Hopefully I get to come back here at PCI once again and join you guys. Thank you.
Okay, so my first question, Mr. Pita, you're talking to about 100 here, maybe 100 people who are most likely probably 10 or 15 years younger than you. And
thank you very
more,
much.
right?
I feel very good, but keep going.
Right, and they are coming from civil society background. Some are from universities, some are from youth communities and some movements. Some even might be in the ministries as public servants. But you had the experience, long, deep experience of leading this strong and successful campaign, actually. And what did you learn for the past years in between how to hold on to your ideals on one hand, on the other hand, having to game up your compromise game as well, and pragmatism on the other hand, for you to win the election?
Okay, so that was a 2-part question. The first question was about the lesson learned from the campaign. And then the second part, she was trying to frame between idealism and pragmatism. So we have to slice and dice it and answer it one by one. What I learned from the campaign is resilience and radical optimism. I learned firsthand that democracy, politics is a long game, and any long game requires patience and strategy. So if that's the case, I have internalized it that it's not going to put me down or make me crumble. I would spend the time that was given to me, this 10-year pause, as the time for me to groom next-gen leaders in ASEAN, for me to build my own knowledge and build up the network, groom the global Thai talent, so that when I return, I would become a better prime ministerial candidate, more vigorous, more capable, and stronger at the time. The second part of your question was trying to think of idealism and pragmatism as a tug of war. But I would disagree on that. I mean, the reason why we won the election was that we were pragmatic reformist. We were pragmatic idealist. Or you can call it idealistic pragmatist. It depends on however you want it. But I would argue that it's not either or question. It's a combination of those. Idealism is not something you give up. It's something you communicate. It's essential. But if you keep it with you without any communication to other people, then yeah, it becomes cynicism, broken idealism. But you have to be both pragmatic as well as idealistic. And the reason why I said that is, yes, I want to reform the country, and I have a first 100-day plan. I have the first year plan. I have the first term plan. I have the 8-year term plan of what I can do and what I cannot do. So I was ready for execution. I was ready for implementation. We prepared 57 legal amendments, documents in order to make it happen. So we were very pragmatic. We weren't just being idealists all the time, and that's about it. But the problem is, in politics, there's idealism and pragmatism, as you asked, but there's transactionalism, and there's survivalism. A lot of politicians is not just stuck between, should I be idealistic but can't get things done, or should I be pragmatic but I have no ideology? But there are politicians all around the world that are transactional or with the survival instinct. I have to do a grand compromise in order for me to survive politically. Otherwise, I don't have a tit versus tat transaction, and that becomes another issue. And I think because of the growing, the third wheel and the fourth wheel, that made a pragmatic reformist or a pragmatic idealist like me out of the political space. So that's how I would answer your first question.
Thank you. That's very strong answer. Mr. Pita, in the era of populism, well, you are a symbol of one who successfully led a reform movement. How do you balance out? Sometimes when you want to push for reform, you need to take unpopular decisions. And how do you manage to also consider the populist needs, if there is any? And what did you learn throughout as well, your campaign and even beyond the campaign?
Well, we definitely have to first give an alternative to populism. Obviously, we were trying to think about it not as an expense when we were trying to help people. We think about it as an investment. We're not thinking about it as OpEx, operational expense. We think about it as a CapEx, capital expenditure, investing in the people. But the negative consequences of doing just a big bang reform is that people cannot feel it right away. But if it's economic populism, helicopter money, people get the money right away, but it's not going to be sustainable. So when you do a big bang reform, that's why I have my first 100-day agenda or first year agenda, and communicate with the people right away, manage expectation right away, that, I understand your suffering, I understand your concern, I understand your liquidity problem, and here's how I'm going to fix it, short term, medium term, and long term. However, if you just, ignore populism and say it's bad, but you don't have an alternative path for it, obviously people will go for a quick helicopter money, of course, but if you, or agriculture subsidies. But if you think about reform, improving productivity in the midterm and the long term, but you also think backwards, but these are the quick wins. These are the low-hanging fruits. You can get it done on the way to that big bang reform. People will be able to understand. Giving you an example, we were champions of land distribution, land rights. If you were a farmer, you could go to a party with the populists and get some agricultural subsidy one time. And once you voted for them, they're gone. But for me, I'm going to help you with something that is very quick as well, but at the same time, land distribution or land justice for you to have that kind of asset to be used as a collateral for you to get into the capitalistic system like any other, like me, like you guys. If you think about it, maybe the Big Bang reform is not so bad. It doesn't take that long in the sense that I have some short-term remedy for you. Then they will think, okay, with one-time subsidy that comes from taxpayers' money is just a distribution of wealth versus improving investment and improving productivity with something short-term that will help you right away. Then people will shine away from economic populism.
Thank you. Mr. Pita, the idea of democracy, when we have a public dissatisfaction on policies, say on economic development, there is a tendency to get an easy conclusion that democracy fails. And then we start to look into some countries not known for liberal democracy like Vietnam, China, for their economic growth and so on. What would you say to the people that think maybe it's the fault of democracy? And what would be your answer to be the bottom line of what a democracy could and could not take? Examples of best practices from
well,
abroad.
first of all, there's a thin red line between competitive autocracy and democracy. Just because competitive autocracy is like you're running the country by autocrats that allows election once in a while doesn't make you a democracy. If it's truly democratic, it will not be a straight line. It will be a zigzag. Sometimes it goes here, sometimes it goes here, sometimes it goes back. But it's a self-corrected system that allows, if you voted for the wrong person in 4 years, or even during midterm in some places in 2 years, you could vote again and correct your mistakes. But if you're thinking of, I have elections also, but there's unelected mechanisms to make sure that election outcome and election result is not always the same. Then you have to really draw that line whether you are true democracy or you are competitive autocracy. So it's really up to us, not just going out to voting turnout is really important. The freedom of speech, the freedom of the press, the ability for the people to control the agenda, independent organization that's really independent and not being weaponized or selectively used for a certain family. And that rings a bell somewhere along ASEAN countries in one shot. So yeah, those things are something that are components of a true democracy, and it's very detailed. Devils is in the detail that the younger generations and people who are truly democratic have to be smart and detailed and really followed up on these situations, because as of now, the way you take away democracy is not as loud and it's not as visible. You're not going to see tanks on the street. You're not going to see people being assassinated. Rather, they'll just use the judicial coup, violence in the courtroom, and political assassination rather than what happened in the past. The painful memory that we had together during May in South Korea, in Thailand, and in Indonesia. It's not going to be like that anymore, because autocrats are much smarter and they are very, very detailed. They're very discreet in the way they want to cling on to power. So that's why I feel like coming over here and talking to younger generations as well as Democrats to come up with Democrats United against Autocrats Inc. Because for those autocrats, they're personalized politics, political dynasties that is on text basis. They can always text one another what they want to do with neighboring countries and things like that. But for us, Democrats, it's once in every 20 years we meet, So I feel like I should be traveling and meeting people with a like-minded, how to stop this democratic backsliding around the world as well as here. And I don't want to reinvent the wheel. If something that is great happened in Latin America, then yeah, maybe I want to take whatever happened to Chile and apply it to this region and become a community like how FPCI wanted to do it.
Why do you think this democratic backsliding around the world is happening?
Several reasons. I feel like I quote one of the Harvard professors. I think right after COVID, and then people started to see, uncontrollable unemployment as well as rising cost, and they started to blame it on immigration and starting to blame it on foreigners and things like that, so that people feel really angry. They were following elections, about 19 elections, only 2 incumbents stayed. The remaining of the elections just went to the challenger because people were so angry about it. And also I felt like the conservative parties, in many, many countries failed to represent their own people. So once the existing conservative parties cannot represent their own people, that's when the far right ideology starts to come in. And when the economy is really bad and great power rivalry starts to come, and it's very easy to blame someone else, for rising cost of living in Germany, blame international students for rising cost of living in Australia. So that's why you started to see all around the world that the right-wing thinking is starting to arise, and because of many, many combinations, and the world is changing. The better question is, what do we do about it? How do Democrats in America offer an alternative America to what's happening now? How do SDP in Germany offer an alternative Germany? How does my party number 3, because number 2 is already dissolved, number 1 is already dissolved, is proposing an alternative Thailand where it's more inclusive and diversity is an asset and not a liability. Otherwise, they will see, okay, the isolation is better, thinking inward is better. You don't have to think about multipolarity or anything. Just this country first, that country first, and that country first all the time, because that's the new normal of the world nowadays.
You touched upon this before already. The topic of today's discussion is democratic resilience, and one of the topic is the role of civil society. You mentioned before, now the battle is not seeing tanks on the street, and it's mostly in the courtroom, on the legislation table, within the system. And we had that history of 1998 of reform, which Thailand might not have, and still struggling on that. But our part of the story, civil society has always been the strong pillar of Indonesian democracy, and I believe that's also happening in Thailand and many countries. But today's the challenge is different. It's within the system. We might have this democratic system, but procedural-wise, but implementation-wise, there are many forms of manipulations of the system, institutions, laws are as well weaponized here. Then where civil society can play most effective part?
Civil society is like shock absorber of democracy. Civil society is something that needs to work when the institutions stop working. So without any civil society organization, when a shock happens, democratic resilience, it means a system that can renew itself and can withstand shocks, and then ability to correct itself. That's what resilience in a nutshell mean. And in order for you to absorb the shock of something when it happens, and the ability to provide an informed decision on many issues, and also continuation, because governments come and go, parliaments come and go. But it's a civil society that works on land justice, indigenous rights, gender equality in Thailand, environmental issues. Those are the pillars that provided the shock and shock absorbing, as well as continuation of the struggle of the marginalized people. So without civil society, it will stop when the government change. But it's a civil society that keeps new governments accountable to the real need of the people. So it's truly crucial. But it's a shrinking space in Thailand, though. I don't know about what it is here in Indonesia. I heard about the uprising a couple of times here, about a military law as well as change of local election. Dark Indonesia, I can't remember exactly, but I feel like, you know, it's called the control of the agenda. The ability for people to control the agenda of the society is part of a democracy, and you were successful, you know. But for us, we have that kind of voters fatigue and civil society fatigue that we've tried and tried again, and we went to election and we finally won, and then again, you know, we were stripped away of the victory, and we don't know whether we should wait, and instead of, you know, hitting the streets, we should just go to the poll and vote again and bring about change from election. So it's a bit of an iffy situation in Thailand, which I completely understand. It's not easy, especially if it's organic. Obviously, some peaceful assembly can be organized and can be systematically paid for in order for them to show up, but for organic assembly is something that is pretty tiring and dangerous also, which is something I agree that it's part of democracy, but I can't, you know, take responsibility for people's lives and things like that. That's why I chose the other path, which is to wait my time out, return better, and win within the parliamentarian system, which might be slower but more sustainable. In a way that, yes, I'll keep winning. The first time I got 80, the second time I got 152, next time I'm going to get 200 and 250. If I keep winning gradually, it will eventually reach a pivot point that finally the time of change has come from within. Yeah.
You mentioned civil society fatigue, and I think that might be also happening in Indonesia, although the civil society keep, you know, lighting up each other's spirit in some ways, but political cynicism toward politicians and governments is very deep among Indonesian public and even younger generation. You mentioned the hashtag of kabur aja dulu, meaning go abroad, and secondly, Indonesia gelap, the dark Indonesia. And I think it has gotten to a point where this cynicism is towards politicians and government in general. And you, in Thailand, capture most votes. You earn the trust of the people, and people see that they can rely on you. What would be your answer for the politicians here and the governments here if they ask for your advice how to earn trust from the people?
Consistency and transparency. It's very easy. I mean, if you are consistent with your message, and if you're transparent in your decision, you might not come to the answer right away, but you're very transparent in the way you think and the way you frame your argument, you know, and you're accountable to your words. I feel like that's essentially, you know, the element of trust. Even within a smaller micro institution like families, you know, to companies, to towns or to countries, if you are consistent with the message, if you're transparent with the way you think and how you come about solutions, I think that would be my advice to governments, that, you know, they keep the voters informed, and that would be the only way you gain trust. But if there's lack of political integrity and lack of political accountability, that's, you know, part of something that you have to live up to the burden of not being trusted by the voters, because you deserve it.
How would you define a good leader in today's era?
As of now, I feel like you have to be a consensus between international politics and domestic politics. You have to be a consensus between the public and private sector. And you have to be the consensus with people who come before you and people who come after you. You have to have humility when praised and the ability to adapt when criticized. But I feel like the world is coming to a new world order, and countries are operating on the old consensus. Old consensus when there's a new normal. So that's why I feel like the leader that's actually how I differentiated myself from other candidates also. I tell them, I have some international background, but I also have rural backgrounds in Thailand. I have the ability to speak to the rice growers or the rubber plantation or the SMEs. I also understand the private sector and also the public sector. When the private sector requires regulatory guillotine from the public sector, I understand exactly what they're talking about. If I'm the policy maker, then I understand that this kind of policies, the private sector might not be happy. And then at the age of 44, I'm in the middle of people who have come before me, which I will ask for their experience so that I have the energy to keep pushing this region forward. But then I also understand that people who are the first-time voters, which is not so far from me, I hope, and I also understand what they are looking for as well, because the sentiment of the era is very different from people who are 20 years older than me and 20 years younger than me. So because of that, I feel like that's the kind of the leader that the world needs at the moment, and that's what I strive to be. I'm not perfect yet, but that's what I strive to be, the consensus of, the new consensus for the new normal of the people.
One of the reasons why we ask what's your definition of a good leader is when the leadership that rose to power today, definitely they have gone through these campaigns, and they had to, of course, like you said, they have to have these transactions and so on, and sometimes to a point where they no longer have the autonomy to make decisions, and they're no longer serving the people, but serving a master, or master with the S, masters. And the younger generation also, you said how many questions coming, such as how to form a political party and how much does it cost to run. But really, if we decide to run today, let's say some half of this room, let's say they want to run for office and make themselves a candidate, what they think of would be definitely, can I maintain my autonomy with this deeply, I think, manipulated system in a way. Yeah.
So the answer to that is your campaign finance. After that, it's called the campaign management. It has to be a lean campaign management so that your campaign finance is also lean. And that's why you don't need to get big grants from big corporates that can call you, right before you vote in the National Assembly. And what I call how we came about the campaign management is precision politics. We use a lot of data, we use a lot of technology that allows us to survive on average donation of about $15. So it's all based from taxpayers' money. We do some merchandising. We do a lot of party membership grassroots, which is about $70. So either because of that, we didn't use a lot of money. My competitor said, if you run elections for 100 times, it wouldn't be the same cost that I spent. So because of that, precision, that kind of data-driven, that the incumbents or the older politicians or the older competitor party wouldn't know how to do, we do know how to do it. So that's why we owe no one nothing. And when you owe no one nothing, that means you're a very happy politician, because it's such a glum and gruesome occupation is to be a politician that has to listen to someone else and cannot vote your conscience. And I think that's something that is the worst job in the world, I guess. So because of the way we manage the campaigns and things like that, that's why we were able to maintain a political autonomy for the time during that. I think that's also the reason why they are really scared of us, because we're ready for elections any day. If there's a snap election tomorrow, we're ready. But for them, they have to raise funds first, right? And then because we we answer to nobody, and that's why they felt like there's no leash. It's a long leash to get us back, and maybe the military or the monopolies were not were a bit paranoid about us.
I'll open the floor for questions in a moment, but so prepare your questions. My last question. meritocracy and democracy oftentimes being seen as two elements that are difficult to merge, especially with the system highly manipulated. Yes, we need to scale up, we need to level up in terms of finance management and so on and so forth if they run. But the mood here in Indonesia is we see appointed leaders, say, not up to standard or are not having the capability and the quality that we expect them to be. And those are happening because many speculate that there are political transactions to be fulfilled because they help, let's say, during the campaign or so on and so forth. How would you explain to us the way to actualize meritocracy in a democracy, in a vibrant democracy?
So how do you keep the appointed accountable? Is that it? Can you elaborate your question again?
I'll give one story.
Yeah.
So we had this youth-to-youth dialogues with the German, and we talk about democracy in each of the country. And in Germany, for someone coming from nobody to some leader, in a minister or as a parliamentarian, it's already normal that they don't talk about it. But here in Indonesia, from nobody to somebody, they talk about it as if it's very rare and very, wow, it's such an achievement when it's supposed to be a normal thing that anyone can run and anyone can be a leader as long as they have the quality and they have the effort and they have the capability and the credibility. But we see that it's not happening here.
I see. So barrier to entry? Barrier to entry politics for someone with
and eventually
a common
good
last
leadership
name might not be able to enter politics?
That's one thing, and eventually good leadership of the government in general.
I think that there's a structural issue there, especially happening in ASEAN. Back in the days, with probably when I was young and ambassador's time, there's dynastic politics and proxy leadership, things like this. You know, with the Bush, with the Trudeau, with the Abe, and things with the Kennedys. That was also something that was going on around the world. But apparently, it's becoming quite popular over here in Southeast Asia. Whether it's the Philippines, whether it's Thailand, whether it's Indonesia, whether it's Laos, even, you know. So I feel like that's really part of my mission back at Harvard when I want to groom next-gen leaders so that they can run for office without breaking their bank account or compromise their values. And I think it's really also within our control. There's some parts that is out of our control. It might take a collective effort to fix it, like maybe constitution or the electoral laws and things like that. But it's really within our control in the sense that if we learn our political identity, asking questions such as why I want to run for office, and why for this political party, and why now is the time and not next time. You know, those are the things that will become your stump speech. It will become your political identity that says that, you know, my name is this, I want to run for office because I want to change this, and I want to run for this party because this party aligns with me, and now I'm ready because of so on and so on, you know. And once you have that identity, you'll be able to communicate very effectively. You'll be able to raise some funds very easily also in this opening environment nowadays, unlike 40 years ago, for example. So there's something within your control to, you know, go over the barrier. And I think there's many institutions around this region, as well as in Japan, in Korea, in America, that is willing to provide you the pathway to politics and have that kind of like future candidates program. At least I'm one. I mean, that's how I spend my time with someone who wants to be a mayor in Japan. Comes with, you know, okay, you and me, we craft the campaign strategy together. So how many people in your district? If you look at the previous count, where is the strong base? What's your average age of this town? Yeah, are they more farmers or they're more agriculture? Where do you prioritize? Who is a potential donor for your campaigns? Those are the things that are within control. But if you don't even know because there's lots of times people who want to run for public office is just because of that prestige that you have. That will die down very, very quickly, you know. But if you know exactly why you want to run for public office, you want to run because you think Indonesia can and you can. And you, once you do that, you want to get rid of corruption, or you want to introduce clean coal, or you want to introduce green climate crisis, or take care of the transboundary pollution. I mean, it's so clear that you wanted to do something with your power when you do a communication strategy, when you do a fundraising strategy, when you do a volunteer management strategy. The articulation is clear, and then it becomes possible. But if you keep saying, you know, it's within this country, if you don't have a certain last name of, you know, dynastic politics, you know, it's going to be very hard for you to do it. Then yeah, it's going to be like that, because the world is not fair. There's always a structural barrier, but there's some behavioral amendment of yourself that you can finally, you know, step up and finally climb over. You know, and our party in Thailand is very clear. 152 MPs, you know, without you know, prominent last names, or without any big bank accounts. Maybe several of them well off from their parents, but majority, it could be a Grab driver. We have one, and we have one who's a laborer in a textile company. We have one that is indigenous people up in Chiang Mai, and they become MPs. Yeah, so we figured it out pretty much, and I'm very happy to help you guys if you want to.
I think we also do have angkot driver, for instance. Okay, I'll open the floor for questions. I'll give the first opportunity for Ambassador Sumadi.
Thank you very much for the privilege, Jenny. I have two questions, very basic question. One is, in any country you have government or leaders and the people. In democratic country, the people has a right, but right has always entailed responsibility. My question is, what is the responsibility of the people in a democratic country? This is one. And the second is that you call it democracy, but the manifestation, either it legally, institutionally, are different in any countries. May I know your opinion on the prerequisite, the conditio sine qua non, for a political system to be called democratic? Thank you.
The second part of the question is freedom, liberty, and fraternity, to begin with, in order for you to become democratic. And the responsibility of the people is definitely keep your representative accountable. So go out to vote is something that is very important. It's not always the case, because if you look at the overall voting turnout around the world, it's dropping like crazy. From average of about 65% of global voting turnout, last year it went down to about 50-something. And if you look at Britain, if you look at Japan, you know, even developing countries or developed countries, the voting turnout is lower and lower and lower. In Thailand, during my case, we won because it was the highest voting turnout in the history of Thailand, 78%. So if people felt like they have to use their rights and keep the government accountable through democratic means, that's essentially the role of the citizen. Obviously, you have to be happy, work hard, and pay taxes, but the trust of the government that returns to the people, that they feel comfortable, that they want to be part of the contribution to the country fiscal space, is also something that is very important as well. How about we take 3 rounds?
Yes, let's get
rounds
some
of
questions. Yeah?
What time do we finish?
Team? 3:30 is the time for ending the session. Can someone help the mic to go around? Yeah, mainly.
I need a book and a pen, please. If
you can use mine.
Can help me?
Just use mine. You need it more than I do.
Okay.
All right.
Terima kasih.
So Mandy, go there one. Yeah, I'll give this one, and then Rafli.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I think follow up from the ambassador questions, back on the topic of democratic resilience. What is your I want to, I want you to brief us more about your notion about democratic resilience, especially in ASEAN countries, where there is a very vague understanding about what democracy actually means, whether it's beyond the procedural democracy or more on, as you said before, equality, freedom, and fraternity. And second, it's there is a new article coming out in Indonesia, authored by Indonesian scholar, which is really enlightening about the growing authoritarian attitudes among the younger generations. For example, with the election of Prabowo, which although it doesn't causally, in terms of causal effect that younger people are more authoritarian, no. It's just that the attitude is the preference of strong, disciplined, and powerful figure as leadership can make people, especially younger people, to kind of like be oblivious about authoritarian kind of like values and allow that to happen. And in terms of, since you can be considered as a younger leader in the parliamentary system, what is your strategy to move that kind of directions, especially with the younger voters growing up? Will they maintain this kind of like point of view, or are you gonna steer it a little bit back to the classical notion of democracy? Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Pita, considering your experience with the dissolution of the Move Forward Party and your subsequent political ban, how do you envision the role of civil society in advocating for judicial and constitutional reforms in Thailand? Specifically, what strategies can be employed to ensure that such lead to a more resilient democracy, and how can civil society effectively engage with institutional structures that have historically been resistant to change?
One more? Lady.
I would like to know if you are a prime minister this time, and then right now there is a, not right now, before, there is a problem about Uyghur. How you gonna deal with it?
Mr. Pita.
So I think the question one, and the first part of your question was about resilience and the role of civil society. I feel like the problems within ASEAN, whether it's Thailand and Indonesian, is the question of independent organizations, courts, anti-corruption commission, where sometimes it's not really dependent, and the question of who watches the watchdog, because a court can decide on the faith of a political party, but there's no accountability, there's no independent. Independent of what? Independent to who? Those are the things that are really testing the resilience of democracy. Whereas I feel like to a certain degree in South Korea, when there is a shock that happened within the system, and the parliamentary and the institutional strength allowed self-correction, and the independent organizations, the South Korean might disagree, but the independent organizations such as the Constitutional Court protect the constitution of that country rather than destroying the constitution of Thailand or any other countries. Because we don't have that kind of strategies to tackle his question. If the independent organizations, whether election commission, whether courts, whether anti-corruption commission is not to be weaponized, it has to be taken on three things. First is the origin of these independent organizations. Second is the transparency of their ruling. And third is the accountability. So, in many, many countries where there's a system that is very similar to Thailand, I don't know about Indonesia, but the origin of these people would have to be decided by the consensus of the lower house and upper house with some linkages to the people, not appointed. Yeah, that's the origin. so that they're really independent and not dependent on the people who appointed them. That's a case. And transparency of how they come about a decision, it has to be shown, it has to be out in the public for scrutiny. Like people have to have that ability to criticize if they disagree, not going to jail for criticize, the verdict and things like that. That's something that needs to be changed. And the third one is on accountability. Sometimes in various countries, maybe 50,000 signatures or 100,000 signatures can actually revoke or remove independent organizations. Otherwise, they will be independent to all of us, but will be very dependent on a particular family, maybe one or two, in both of our cases. So to answer both of your questions is that, yes, resilience is the ability to withstand shock, the ability to reset itself, the ability to self-correct. And a lot of that requires, the power of the people, requires the opposition, a strong, robust opposition to keep the government in check. But at the same time, the independent organizations that as part of democracy should protect democracy and not destroy it. Yeah. The second part of your question was about the youth, no? Right? So I feel like that's a global phenomenon now. When I was in America with the election of President Trump, also I feel like the first-time voter or younger voters that's supposed to be idealistic, it's supposed to be progressive and dreaming ahead of their time, are being neglected and left out, and also voted for a more conservative candidate as well. So that's what keeps me awake at night. I mean, as a political party, I told my successor, the party that succeeded me, that you have to be on the ground with the engagement strategy and voter mobilization, and cannot take it for granted that the younger voters will always vote for you like last time. Because they went through a COVID crisis, they went through 2 military coups in Thailand. Because of that, then they felt like if the Liberal Party, in whatever spectrum you are, does not respond or does not empathize with them, you only want to mobilize them for votes, and they're not stupid. They know that you just want to mobilize them for votes, and you're not really understanding or empathizing to their struggle, and that's when the conservatives will come and poach these young votes out. So a constant engagement strategy and voter mobilization every day for 4 years. There's no more campaign trails. Campaign trails is 100 days before the election day, but you're on the campaign every day. That's how competitive politics would be, because autocrats will have the resources to be on the ground, to have idea domination, to the grassroots people, rural people, the younger generation. If they see that it's a vacuum, then they will go to them. That's when on our side, stop panicking and organize. You have to stop the panic, and start organizing right away. Otherwise, you can't never take the new voter for granted. For Thailand, it's 1 million per year. So if they take me out for 9 years, that's 9 million votes when I return. But I cannot take it for granted that they will always vote for me, because there's always that kind of neglect, that kind of conservative capture that allows it, with the algorithm of the social media that will keep polarizing, keep giving the message, the misinformation operation that goes straight to the youth. So if you don't continually and consistently engage them and dominate ideas, you lose them out. The last question was about Uyghur deportation. I mean, with Thailand being part of the torture treaty, non-refoulement is something that we cannot do, especially on the year that Thailand is the head of Human Rights Council. It's simple as that. It might not be the most ideal thing that we keep them from 2015 to 2025, which is 10 years now, and the last 3 Uyghur was second to Canada. But for some reason, that happened without transparency, without warning, and it's against the international law. So what I would do is I would not do what the government did. Obviously, we still have some diplomatic capital in order to, give them a good environmental living in Thailand while we negotiate and making sure that, this is really the will of the people and it's within the international norm. Okay, how many rounds?
Okay, we will
maybe one
open
round?
again for another round. Mandy, this
I have to go to airport next,
That
so
one?
please be
Exactly.
kind to me.
that one. I think we'll finish earlier. Also, yang baju biru di belakang gercep ya. Kemudian Rafli yang di sini ya. Silakan. And then yes, please. And then
And also, one thing that I just came out with, it was Secretary of State Marco Rubio who passed the Uyghur Act in America. So that's why when you assertive neutrality is something that is super important in the great power rivalry right away. But for you to go against the international norm, and that's when the United States of America Secretary of State is not very happy with Thailand, because he was the champion of the law back in the days, and not a lot of people know about it. It was Marco Rubio who put the Uyghur Act into the American Congress. It's really a hot potato for the Americans now, and that's what Thailand decided to do, which is not a smart thing.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Pita. So I think I have 2 questions. The firstly, I think I want to know about how did you ensuring and what elements that you makes your voters or your supporters tend to believe with the spirit of People Party? Because I think despite this, we know that Thailand already experiencing 12th time the military coup. And then my question is, are they even feel tired or maybe even tend to be forgetting or want to be ignoring this current situation? Because I think this kind of the repetitive event, like how the Thaksin Shinawatra become the prime minister, and again there's already become a coup. And the second thing is, I love the way that you conduct your campaign at the Thailand, especially at the rally and also the spreading of the brochure to the each circle group, such as at the Chiang Mai and also the Rayong. My question is, in your opinion, with today's current digital disruption, do you feel the existing of the AI will be impacting of the political campaign, especially for the next general election at the Thailand? Thank you.
over here. Mandy, do you have? Okay.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Pita. I am Rafli. I'm actually an alumni from FPCI Democracy Forum, and we do a lot of case study. So I do have a case study for you as well for today. So this is a what would you do kind of questions. And it's about a campaign strategy. So we believe true democracy means we must have a rational voter. We must have voter who discuss, then decide. But imagine if your country voter literacy rate is only 0.005%. I'm mentioning about a real country. And would you use a method of campaign with open discussions, go through every cities and discuss? Or by knowing that the literacy rate is so low, so you're going to have like helicopters, money approach when you do, dancing activity that is low, not so rational as that point, but you adjust to your campaign. Why did I ask this question? Because based on our last forum discussion, this is a very controversial question. There is a podcast in Indonesia recently, and it is from the campaign team from one of the candidate, and they said the other candidate will lose. Why? Because they believe the other candidate does not know their audience. They believe that their audience literacy rate is so low, so you don't use a rational style. So within this kind of ecosystem, what would you do in your campaign in order to win? That's all.
One more. The lady over there. Yeah, let me give you. Excuse me, sorry.
Hi, I'd like to hear more consensus, more specific on how to build an appetite for institutional reforms, say for like campaign finance included, because you did mention managing expectations is a thing, but would it work in today's context of Indonesia where autocratic legalism is real and there's deep cynicism in civil society? And also essentially that's to touch the question, how do you balance between constructive engagements and having an oppositional stance? Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for the questions. The first question was about the normalization of coups in Thailand. Just to give you a bit of context, Thailand has been democracy for about plus minus 100 years, from 1932 and now is to 2025, right? So not exactly 100 years. But the first 80 years is usually through military coups that the military intervene democracies and keep power in check. Then the last remaining 20 years from 2006 to now, they would use judicial coup and political assassination, like how I explained it to you. But yes, there's a because it's been 13 times, and there's certain normalization of coups to the extent that something that's atypical or unimaginable in other countries is typical in my country or imaginable in a country. I still remember when I first, I was a designated survivor, and when I took over the party as a party leader, the first question that comes from both foreign correspondents and Thai journalists, whether the party will be banned again and whether military coup is still a possibility in Thailand. And my question is yes, it's still a possibility. So something that I forecast in the future and something that I have 10 to 15% that of my scenario planning, the worst case that yes, I'll be deposed, and it really happened. But I kind of managed my own expectation, and I felt like this is possibility. But with the radical optimism, I stopped whining about it and start thinking of how to make sure that I'm the last victim of what's going on, and how do you make sure that winning election is not enough, so you have to win more, but at the same time to really have the hegemony or dominating the ideas, to have collapse from within, within the army, within the police, concentrated areas. We won the election, in places in areas where it's concentration of army camps or navy camps, or not navy camps, of air force camps. We won those districts. So I think there's some fire starter there that if you keep engaging, just per the last question, that yes, you have to have enough numbers in the parliament to vote in order for you to have the appetite for institutional reform. But you also have to engage those who are deemed your opponent so that they totally understand what we are all about and the benefit of reform. Finally you can become a professional army with a proper career path, with a proper equipment, so that you can protect our country without mingle with the internal politics of our country. So that's why if you are in the bottom 70% of the army, you would vote for me. Of course, the top 1% will be like that, but it's only the matter of time that these mid-rank police, anti-corruption, court, army will be high-ranking, but they have seen my face, they've seen me eye to eye, they have asked me hard questions and I answer them. If I keep engaging them, and finally we'll be able to get out of these vicious cycle. It will be one day that we have enough hands in the parliament to change the constitution, to finally have some institutional reform. But most importantly, just like reformacy, if the people, the majority of Thais don't demand it enough, no matter how many votes you have inside, there's always, even if I'm in Jakarta, I can smell that something is brewing in Bangkok. To stop progress, I can smell it from here. So yeah, it's really about your representative as well as the people around you, that finally you are aligned with the way you want to move forward in this country. Otherwise, the inertia is just too much, and there's no space left for Thailand, which is the second largest in ASEAN, but the second slowest. We're growing at 1.8. You are growing at 4.8. You are 1.5 trillion GDP. We are 0.5. You are 3 times bigger than us. You are supposed to be elephant that cannot dance, but at least you're dancing at 4.8. We're dancing at 1.8. So yeah, that kind of inertia, I feel like it will become ripe one day, that people started to demand politicians that respond to the demand of the people. Sooner or later it will come. I don't doubt it. And then I return to your question, which is the what would you do question about the campaigns of voters with very low literacy. There's 2 types of politicians, one that dump down the voters and one that smart up the voters. I'm more of the second one. And you have to really, obviously you have to respect them and empathize them. They're part of the system that was passed on from various generations. Speak their language. So my trick is simple as if I go down to southern part of Thailand or the northern part of Thailand or the northeastern part of Thailand, I just ask 2 questions. So, what keeps you awake at night? What keeps you awake at night? And then that's something that is humane enough without literature that they will tell you. And once you do that, and I said, if I do something like this, would it make your heart sing? Would the bell inside your heart ring? And then they say yes. And that becomes the communication. And the way that it becomes a one-issue district that is so simple enough and used in their own literature, used in their own language. And finally, they open up, and we don't have to dump down our voters. We can smart up the voters. And finally, they can differentiate, and you can see the differences between helicopter money that they get for one time and disappear for 3 years and 364 days. But then we're there not to use them but to understand them and very continually try to solve their problems. It could be mining, in my personal experience, it could be mining, it could be a waste management factory that is destroying their health through smell. They might not know what the substance is, but it's really hurting their family and their health. So if you have that one issue for that one district, you will smart them up, and you don't have to dump down by giving them $20 or $30. Yeah.
Sorry for holding you for one more question, Mr. Pita. This is closing question. We finished earlier. I think this is very important. Now, the mood in Indonesia, well, I'm not going to talk about the hashtag kabur aja dulu, going broad first, but when I talk to my friends who are alumni of foreign universities, they're smart people, they're talented people, and they want to contribute to the country, to Indonesia. But there is this mood that if I come back, there's not enough incentive for me. That's one. And 2 is the pessimistic wind that keeps going against them. And this also, may I relate to Indonesia jargon of Indonesia Emas, the golden Indonesia 2045, because of our bonus of demographic age population are mostly productive age later. But we are now being challenged by this pessimistic wind that we think the golden Indonesia 2045 with the economic growth and so on won't happen unless there's a change of how we treat these talents, young people.
Brain drain.
Brain drain is maybe one thing. Maybe another way to put it is we just find ourselves more valuable, let's say, outside, and like I said, not enough incentive and
Sure. It's the same problem with Thailand, especially, and I agree with you. All my Indonesian students either wanted to stay in the States for a while, and then when they return to run for public office later. But do you wanna do the last round, or
can we still have 10 more minutes?
Yeah, we can have 3 more questions, and then because I saw some hands, I feel bad you guys come and wait.
Over there, one. Yes, that one, and then you. Yeah.
Let me start. Thank you for the opportunity, and let me introduce myself. My name is Drew Ramadan. I want to ask you one question. is, although you are not in the office right now, what reforms do you think are still needed for Thailand democracy, or maybe the similar system to the other country? And how can they be pushed forward despite opposition from powerful groups? Thank you.
Next one is over there, Mandy. Yes.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Hi, Mr. Pita. My name is Timothy. It's such an honor to be here, as I was yesterday at Georgetown as well, attending your talk. So my question is, since you mentioned throughout this talk, how important transparency is, especially when government is trying to make a decision, and then how their decision should be made with, again, transparency, and how there should be a room for critics, basically. So given, I feel like discussions about specifically the lèse-majesté law in Thailand are becoming more open, although there are, how can I word this? It's a sensitive topic, right? But it's becoming more open. I'm just wondering your thoughts on how do you envision having a more open environment for critics and also for public discourse. Yeah, thank you so much.
One more. Yeah, over there, Mandy. This one.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm Agung. I'm one of the government employees, but I'm here not to present my institutions or any kind of interest of my government, but I attend here as my personal interest to the historical and political upheaval in Thailand, especially in your experience. And the main question of mine is, what do you expect from Indonesian when you get the opportunities 9 years in the future? What do you, how do you perceive an outlook for Indonesians, the youngsters, and also the overview of our nations? And the second, maybe this is quite silly, but have you ever experienced?
Silly. You can fire away.
Thank you very much. Have you ever been in a really dangerous situation? Some military, or even your private circle, family, or even colleagues?
Yes, it was evident in the parliament that the soldiers know when I return to my house or when I leave the house. So it was documented, and the opposition had a no confidence motion debate, and it was clear that my name was under attack of digital activism and also civilians. It's part of politics, so yeah, I try to be careful, but it doesn't scare me or anything like that. It's pretty normal that other politicians, when they go, even in Indonesia, you would have a police car in front of the politician, right? For me, police is at the back, following me and things like that, and taking pictures without the permission and things like that. And then I get used to it, and I know they're undercover. I said, so you're undercover, huh? And they say, like, I just have to do my job. I said, okay, so you take the picture. Don't forget to vote for me, huh? So, yeah, it has to be humor over rumor. So you have to take it with a line of salt, but obviously you have to like protect your family, my daughter, my family, and things like that as well. What I look from the Indonesians is common ground. And I still haven't found it in this trip. I mean, you are ASEAN number 1, we are ASEAN number 2. We have 75 years of history. Bandung was 70 years ago of non-aligned movement. In this great power rivalry where regional unity is so important, to really work it out, but I still struggle. Maybe I have to come back again and see how we can work together given the challenge, the turbulent time that is ahead of us. But in terms of youth, I wanted to come here and build a network and build a knowledge in the sense that when I return, I really, really think that we could be a middle power just like that. It's been a term that's been coined for a very long time, middle power, and things like that. But it was not materialized. And I feel like if it were to be materialized, now it's really the time to use ASEAN as a stabilizer of the Sino-American rivalry, rather than just spectator and becoming pawns of their power chess game. And if we don't have any common ground, just number one and number two, and finally we can branch out to maybe the first 5 founding members of ASEAN, and then finally the remaining ones, revitalize East Asia Summit and ARF and those things that were so prominent back in the days when ASEAN still mattered. But as of now, we're pretty much spectator and not a stabilizer. So that's something that I expected from Indonesia. And to know one another and to keep each other, to share best practices and things like that, because it could be a domino effect. I mean, you look at the history in the past. If a country turn into something that we don't want to do, it's like a disease. If one country coughs, the neighbor gets sick. You know, those things are called slippery slope argument. It happens. But if you have institutional strength, if you have diplomatic capital, Thailand can also join you and things like that as well. On the question of brain drain, I also get a lot of questions like that. But I feel like, you know, to force Thai talents in New York, in Japan, in Tokyo, in Sydney, in Singapore, in Jakarta, to return back to Thailand where the environment is not suitable for them, it's a sin. So I feel like, you know, what I want to, they ask me these questions, like very famous filmmaker in New York from Thailand. It's like, you stay where you are, make yourself happy, make yourself well known. I'm going to do a global map talent, and I know where you are. So whenever the government has a national strategy of what Thailand wants to do, then I know where the talent pipeline is. I'll return to you, but please don't forget Thailand. But there's no need for me to incentivize or pressure you to return and use nationalistic sentiment to make you return, because, you know, you'll be nothing in Thailand if you are a pop singer in Korea or a filmmaker in New York or a scientist in Cambridge. So stay where you are, maximize your potential. I know where you are. When I get to govern, this is my policy, this is my strategy, and you become the ambassador of a certain thing. Thank you.
I think that would be the most encouraging message so far that we have heard on this issue. But continue, Mr. Pita.
There was a question about if I'm out of politics already, is there anything that we can drive in terms of reform? So that question meant that the government has to agree with the opposition. It has to be a non-bipartisan agenda that could be pushed. I feel like some demonopolization is possible, specifically liquor liberalization to make sure that we don't monopolize on a couple of beers and things like that. That could be probable. Some minor land reform is also something that is a boon to the population of Thailand, and that could be bipartisan. Fighting against corruption, especially when, you know, because there was a collapse in the building from the earthquake that happened in Thailand. So that's something that is being prevalent in the country. So maybe that top 3 of demonopolization, minor land reform, and some corruption might be the hot buttons that the opposition and the government can push together. If I were to summarize the problem of Thailand today, is that it's on the table, it's under the table. The tariff agreement is on the table, and the Indonesian team is doing something about your 19 billion surplus and expected what to buy and what to do with your critical minerals. Our team hasn't been there yet, and what's under the table is all the corruption that needs to be fixed. So I feel like if they can work together between opposition and the government on what's on the table and what's under the table, I think that would be a marginal improvement or a marginal reform to my country, as per your question. In terms of critics of 112 and transparency, all I wanted to do is to reform Thailand while preserving monarchy. And what I asked for is not a complete transparency in the sense that the monarch is being criticized unfairly, but the proportionality of law between freedom of speech and protection of the head of the state, whether it's the president, whether it's the monarchy, is that proportionality that is beneficial to all institutions in the country. And that's all I aim for. But I was punished because of that. Because some people might not understand that the sentiment of the era changes all the time. And once you think about that kind of shifting proportionality from certain type of governance to constitutional monarchy, it's beneficial for all institutions in that country. So proportionality of law is all I asked for at the time. Through transparency, through a parliamentary system, rather than leaving this situation on the streets, on Twitter, or at the UN where they criticize my country all the time because of that. I didn't want my institution to be criticized by the international community. That's all I tried. But yeah, over paranoid, I guess. That's fine. So
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you very much.
Mr. Pita, for 1 hour valuable, insightful discussion. I think your story did not only inspire Thai people, but also globally, Indonesians. How many followed the news of Thailand and followed the news of Mr. Pita? Raise your hand. See, they're informed audience. All right, I believe we got some gift for you, right, Mandy?
Yes, please stay in the stage. We want to welcome Ambassador Sumadi to present a souvenir from FPCI to Mr. Pita.
It has your name on the, yeah.
Please, for the coordinator to set for documentation. There we go.
I think Mr.
Yeah,
Pita
maybe
and
and
Ambassador
up
Sumadi
to the
can-
stage, please.
Yeah.
Yes, so we have a better ground. Okay, look to the camera, everyone. Wonderful. Now, if you would please stay in the stage and turn around. We want to get a picture with all the participants here. There we go.
Yes, Mr. Pita, you can come down. We take a picture with the whole audience here. Oh, immediately.
Oh, perhaps there's another gift. Oh, what's wonderful.
Politicians. So by wearing this jacket,
It's a wonderful fit.
by having this jacket, that means you always have a desk here at FPCI whenever you come back. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Everyone, please take your, yes? Okay, wonderful.
We invite everyone to stand up. Stand up or sit down?
I think sit down is
sit down.
okay.
Sorry,
Maybe
sorry,
in the
guys.
back, it's all right. If you will want to stand up, that is also okay there.
You're the master of ceremony. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay, so we can sit
Yeah,
down.
position
and take a
yourselves.
picture.
Position
Okay.
yourselves to look at the camera.
Please, here
Yes.
with the audience, sitting down so everybody is on the frame. Yes.
Okay, everyone in the back, if you feel like you're not yet seen, you can please stand up. That's also okay. But everyone in the seats, please, that's okay. Take your seats. Okay. Okay. Everyone ready? Okay. 1, 2, 3. Take position. Smile. Yes. Oh, look at Jenny. What Jenny's doing. Yes, that's all right. Everyone, you can do the heart pose. That's it. Look at the camera.
Is it not the same in Thailand?
1, 2, 3.
That's the common ground you were searching for.
1, 2, 3. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you again, Mr. Pita. Have a good trip. Yeah, we'll send you.